Alrighty. Hello and welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Let's Build a Basic Fantasy RPG Adventure. Of course, we are continuing on with our level 1 through 3 adventure, The Catacombs of Korud. Real quick, I want to give a shout out to Roll for Tarako for the compliment that he left on my video. Steve, I'm unclear, Steve, how your how your name is pronounced. If it's Fugate or Fugate, or I apologize. But shout out to him for his compliment. Shout out to Archeo Matt, who is known for his channel Dirty History and Hobbies. I apologize. For his compliment and really kind of helping to help my morale in some ways and continue this. And of course, Fred Daniel, who has supported my input into this hobby from day one. And of course, Retro DM Ray, who, brother, we need to play one day. We're going to have to eventually. It's just finding the time, right? And of course, shout out to all my players that I have, and thank you for putting up with a lot of the stuff I have. But anyway, so we get to the adventuring party. Now, a quick tip for you guys before we continue on, because I understand that creating an entire NPC party of adventurers seems at least a little bit intimidating at first. Well, I'm here to tell you that you don't necessarily have to have all this detail. Not yet, anyway, because of the case that you don't know how your players are going to react to these guys. They could kill them outright if they wanted to. And if they do that, they do that. Or the NPCs could kill them. You don't know what's going to happen yet. So, you just kind of go with the flow. You don't need to have nothing set in stone yet in terms of stats. Looking through Basic Fantasy RPG with the edition I have, I'm referring to page 148 in the Game Master Information section. I'm not sure what page that is on the in the 4th edition, but you can find it in the 4th edition in the Game Master Information section called Creating an NPC Party. And of course, this is the adventuring party. Now, I rolled up, according to the paragraph here, it says that a party will have somewhere between 4 to 8 players, or 4 to 8 characters. I apologize. And in this situation, because, and I'll explain why I've decided to make all these guys level 1 and call them a rookie party, because I'm sure you could see that up there. I'll explain that here in a little bit. But we have, of course, 3 fighters, 2 thieves, and 2 clerics. And then they give some percentages. Chris Gunnerman gives some percentages down there in the second paragraph, where it says that 4% are elvish, 6% are halfling, 10% are dwarves, and the remaining 80% are human. If you're curious about how I did the math on that, I simply reversed engineered, for lack of a better term, that particular sentence so that I knew where to go. For example, a 1 through 4 on a D100 meant that the character in the party would be elvish. A roll of 5 through 10 on a D100 was a halfling. 11 to 20 was dwarf, and of course 21 to 100 would be the human. And there's only a couple non-humans in this party. Of course, in Basic Fantasy RPG, in case you didn't know, race is not classed in this system. So we ended up having a halfling fighter on the first roll, which was pretty interesting. Gave him leather armor because halflings have a particular ability to hide. It's a little hard for them to do if they're trudging along in chainmail. So I figured that leather armor would work the best for this little feller, so he wasn't stuck out trying to drag himself around to hide because he was too heavy. Of course, Norbert Smithson. This is where we talk about some name creativity. A lot of times I'll take real life names and I'll play with the spelling a little bit. I did that a little bit last night with the founder of Corrid being Garland Corrid. Garland is, to my knowledge, not a real name. However, Harlan is. And Harlan is a very common name in my area. In fact, I am from Corbin, Kentucky, the home city of KFC, the birthplace of it. And of course, Harlan Sanders. So there's a lot of people around here name their kids Harlan. So that's where it comes from. I played with the spelling a little bit. And of course, I played with Smithson. This guy is the son of a smith. So I played with Smith a little bit, and there you go. It's a naming convention from the from medieval era. We also played a little bit with Layla of Marvith, meaning we didn't really play with her spelling, but we did introduce a new place. Instead of trying to think of the last name, we gave her a place of origin. She comes from Marvith. So that's a place I'm going to add to my setting at some point. We also played around with spelling for the thieves. We have a human and an elf thief. One named Snake, one named Hawk. It made sense to me that thieves would operate under code names so as to conceal their real identity, and for identification within a thieves guild. So, of course, I played with the spelling a little bit. So you have Snake and Hawk. And then for the last two, I introduced factions that I do plan on putting in my world, because the idea of faction play has always appealed to me. Most people only really talk about it either in early or late game, meaning that you either hear about faction play in the earlier lower levels, or you hear about it in the later levels when you're probably getting into the more wargamey side. So anyway, I introduced two factions, Brother Harold of the Judges and Sister May of the War Maidens. Now the Judges I simply came up with by thinking to myself, justice, judge, so he's associated with a church that is, devoted to justice. And for Sister May, War Maidens. And a little history about that. War Maidens came from a short story I created in high school for a literature project in English class. So, although I believe that the main nun in that particular, for the War Maidens, I think her name was Helga or Helgen or Olga. I can't remember exactly what I named her. It's been so long ago. But the point being, I shook off a little dust on that. And so what I plan on doing is that the Judges are like a fraternity, the War Maidens are like a sorority. They're both going to be connected to the same church. It's just that, you have one that's more like monks and one that's for nuns. So now, something else too is that on page 149 in the 3rd edition, it talks about magical items. Each and every character has a 5% chance per level of having magic weapon and magic armor. So those are two separate rolls, by the way. Of course, none of them ended up with it. Each and every one of them had, I believe, a 2% chance to have a potion of some kind. And of course, none of them did. And then, of course, clerics and magic users, which there are no magic users in this particular party, have a 3% chance of having a spell scroll of some kind. Of course, they came up empty on that. And then, of course, there is the chance of having a miscellaneous magical item, in which you take the total number of the levels added up, which in this case there's 7 members. They're all level 1, so 7 times 1, is or I should say 1 times 7 is 7. And that is your percentage for whether or not there is a miscellaneous magical item. They had none. So I decided in this particular case that not only were they low level, that they were rookies. They would be an adventuring party like the PCs in search of riches and fame. However, this party will only be encountered during the daytime, not exactly brave enough yet to try their luck in the catacombs at night. The party consists of 3 fighters, 2 thieves, and 2 clerics. These adventurers will generally react favorably, meaning that they are not a party that relies on kill first, ask questions later. They will generally interact with the PCs with parley unless the PCs act in hostility. How I determined that is I went ahead and I rolled 2d6. And because they reacted favorably, which means that they're not going to be totally friendly, but they're going to be cautious still, but they're not going to be hostile, right? So they're going to be willing to parlay. It's like the second best situation you can have on a reaction roll. And so that determined how I was going to handle the situation with these guys. These guys were going to be rookie adventurers going into the catacombs. And I decided that they were going to have a little bit of a purpose. Anyway, these characters are going to have a little bit of a purpose. They can be bought as eventual retainers when a PC becomes level 2, which according to the basic fantasy core rules, you can't hire a retainer until level 2, because your retainer must be lower level than you. During the night, these characters can be found at the inn in Korrid, and so they serve another purpose in this sense. They're not found there at night, meaning that if the player characters go in at night, which I hope they do, you never know, I've got to come up with a reason why they have to. Mostly probably because there are going to be certain paths that are not going to open up until that time, but I've got to figure out how I'm going to work that. Anyway, continuing on. Because of that, they're kind of sort of meant for like a morale boost, a sort of subliminal morale boost. Hey, these guys are not brave enough to go into the catacombs yet, like we are. It's just kind of help boost the player's self-esteem a little bit. Like, oh, these guys are just starting out too, but we have a foot over them. Now, that's not to say the PCs are going to be successful, but something you can at least hang your hat on is, even if your PCs never level up and all TPK in the dungeon, at least they were braver than these fools. But then again, these fools will be still alive. But I mean, pick and choose your victories, I guess, if that makes sense. I kind of killed my own point when I really think about it. Anyway, so there we go. And as for this particular document, we're not finished yet, but we are putting a pin in it because we are finished with it at the moment. We will be coming back to it because the next time we come on and I do my next video, it is going to be on constructing Korrid itself, because the catacombs, of course, are situated in Korrid. And so it's very convenient to have the level 1 through 3 adventure literally sitting underneath the starting town. So, you got the home base right above, you got the dungeon right below. You don't really have to go outside the city walls, although I'm going to try to come up with some ideas to put outside the city walls so that if the characters adventure outside of there, they at least have something to do. I talked about the drag marshes. That's going to be one. And there's also going to be kind of a mining community, and some woodworking. So there's going to be forests, and there's going to be hills and mountains and stuff like that. So I need to come up with things that could be stuck nearby, or at least within a 6-mile hex, so that the characters can at least, figure out where to, what they're going to do if they ever leave the city walls. But with that being said, I like how it's turning out. I appreciate all the compliments I've gotten. I hope that this does inspire people, because this is, in my opinion, the best thing about the hobby. The ability to create and share these kind of creations with other people. Do not think that this is the final draft. This is not the final draft. This will always have the window to change and evolve as I need it to make it fit somewhere. I introduce random elements so that it is a sandbox and that it's all determined by player agency. All I've done is simply put some sort of reasons in for characters to go and do things, but I'm not going to make them do things. That's the key to a sandbox. You can have total randomness, or you can have just enough randomness, but with things to do with reasons attached. You don't have to have a totally random game. Contrary to misconceptions about some of the things I've said in the past, I've always been in favor of planning some things out. So I've never been totally against planning things out. I'm just against railroading and creating a story and railroading your players along it. But let's get getting off topic now. But anyways, so to give you an idea of what I meant by the fact that this changed form, is that originally this was not called the Catacombs of Korred. This was called the Crypts of Korred. This was going to be featured around the crypt underneath the church. And then when I started talking about the catacombs, I started noticing that I was talking more about the catacombs than I was about the crypts. So it turned from the Crypts of Korred to the Catacombs of Korred. Now the Crypts of Korred are, of course, going to feature in this particular adventure. I'm going to make them fit in some way. But they are not the centerpiece of the adventure. The crypts are not the centerpiece. It is the catacombs. And I have plans for the catacombs. And I hope that you guys are intrigued enough to join me along this adventure to see how I build things. I appreciate all the kind words and the compliments I've gotten. And if anything, if it at least got you to think and to at least create and to say, you know what, I'm inspired a little bit, then it's done its job of what I intended it for it to do. But at the end of the day, I am making this for players to play. So, not necessarily to entertain an audience, but for me to take to a table. I just figured I'd show you the method to my madness and show that I wasn't just all talk, that I do walk the walk as well. With that being said, I thank you guys. Take care. God bless. And I will indeed see you on the other side.